I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call.
President Byrne?
Here.
Trustee Hebda? Here. Trustee Schultz?
Here.
Trustee Markwart?
Here.
Trustee Cook?
Here.
Trustee Green?
Here.
Trustee Williams?
We have a quorum present. Would everybody please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Reminder, December 8th is the only village board meeting in December, unless we have a special meeting. You know, what is staff?
The plan is not to have a special meeting, Your Honor.
I'm just saying.
I
No,
understand, but the plan is not to do that.
You know, you just don't know what's out there, you know? Okay. Yeah, you don't know, right?
You just don't know.
That's probably, did Yogi say that? Yeah, it's probably, I like him. Okay, legislative update, Representative Carol Senti and Representative Ed Sullivan.
There you go.
And an extra one.
We'll let her do most of the talking.
Good evening. How are you? May we proceed?
Yeah?
Okay, so Ed and I are here together because together we represent Vernon Hills. And following some of the other, the past board meetings, you had talked about how the state is impacting you guys locally, as we always do, and we thought it would be nice to come and respond and give a budget update and some of the status. So we'll walk through some of the what's going on right now and little maybe glimmers of hope that are happening, and be happy to take some questions too. So as you all know, but we also don't know about the people at home. So we don't have a budget this year yet for fiscal year 16, and that's very unfortunate. So that begins July 1st and goes of 2015, and it goes through June 30th of 2016. So to highlight the process, normally in January, the governor gives a state of the state. Sometimes it spills over to February, that then he would give the budget address, his proposal, and then usually, in fact, the 6 years that I've been there, by May 31st, we have a budget completed. So this year, we don't have that for the first year. And so to explain just briefly what is happening, I think no one believes that a reasonable, balanced budget can happen this year entirely with cuts. And so the governor is willing to consider additional revenues, but he wants to do that with structural reforms, because there's many things that need to be fixed in the state. And actually, I 100% agree with that, and I know Ed does too. The problem is this discussion is being elevated up to the leaders level, and how long it's taking and how much they're talking is slowing down the budget process. And so we need to look for compromises and win-win solutions. So reform is great, but pretty soon, in fact, January 27th will be the next State of the State address, and in February will be the next budget address. So we're really grossly behind. So what's happening right now, believe it or not, many bills, I shouldn't say most, but many bills are being paid. In fact, if it's either via court order, consent decree, or continuing appropriations, about 90% of our budget continues to be paid, is okay to be paid. Some parts of the budget, some expense items are not supposed to be paid without a past budget. But one of the things I learned this year, and Ed's been in for longer than me, that I found very surprising is that 90% of our budget is actually paid via these three mechanisms. Ed calls them the three Cs. So those would be just a couple examples: debt payments, Medicare, community care for low-income seniors. So those would be a few of the items that fall under those three categories.
Let me just clarify that, though. The three Cs are the fallback if there is not a budget. So that's the clarification there. If we had a budget, then it would be funded at the level that we set, as opposed to right now we're at a funding level of last year instead of doing any cuts that we'd be doing. We're just adding on to what we did last year, and that's because we don't have a budget. That's the three Cs, but go ahead.
What- And the Medicare is Medicaid?
Medicaid.
I'm sorry, did I say Medicare? Yes, thank
Well,
you for
I
clarifying.
can relate to
Medicaid.
Medicare now.
Yeah, Medicaid. So there was one appropriation bill that was discussed back in spring that was signed by the governor, and that was the elementary and the secondary education bill. So that is also, those expenses are being paid as well. So what we have is, we have varying estimates, but approximately $5 to $6 billion of expenses are projected to be above what is the level of income we will take in during this year. Not a good number, a lot. And then as of November 10th, our backlog of unpaid bills is somewhere around $7 billion, and our comptroller is expecting it to rise to about $8.5 billion by December 31st. So she is doing actually a really good job of trying to navigate this system and do some triage with, you know, what needs to be paid or not. And I don't envy that position, but she's, you know, going through and doing the best job that she can with what she's been dealt with. So I just want to talk about a little bit of good news that is coming about, glimmers of hope. I wish I could tell you that it's more, but one of the things you guys had talked about is, well, one, let me back up. The leaders were not meeting as much as I think any of us wanted to see them do that. So we've been pushing them to, we've been asking for, you know, some type of compromise and negotiation. Different people have been pushing, whether it's getting together with their peers, going to their leaders, going to the opposite leader. I know I've done that. I'm sure Ed has done the same. Why can't we look for some win-win solutions? So a group of organizations have kind of pushed the 5 leaders, and when I say that, that would be the governor, the majority leader in the House and the Senate, the minority leader in the House and the Senate, those 5 individuals to get together and have a meeting. It was supposed to be scheduled for tomorrow, November 18th. The speaker's father-in-law died, and so it is being postponed to December 1st, which is the day before the House goes back for, at this point, our last known or published time to go back and vote on any other items. And there are some other bills that I'm hoping we will pass. We did pass the bill that probably affects you the most, when we were in Springfield on November 10th, and that was House Bill 4305, which I'd like Ed to talk about a little bit.
Just so let's kind of wrap the budget up a little bit. We are, because of these consent decrees, these 3 Cs, we are spending 37 and we're bringing in 32. So we got a $5 billion problem. This whole battle, if you will, this stalemate comes down to, do you just raise taxes and feed the programs that were going on before, or do you maybe bring revenue in and reform to try and change the trajectory? And that's the battle that's going on in the simplest form. This last week we've seen some breakthroughs. It's seen some folks say, hey, it's enough is enough. Kind of the more moderate ends of the spectrum on each side have asked for some things to be done. We heard from municipalities that are facing a year of no salt because you don't have the money coming in because we're holding it up. This bill that we passed, House Bill 4305, had nothing to do with this budget fight. It had to do with potential sweeping of monies to help solve the budget. That's really what was holding that up. And so what you've seen is people come together, and we have passed this bill. It needs to go to the Senate. The problem we have is the Senate won't be in until January. Whether they change and add another day to pass that bill, and hopefully they will, I would suggest, and I know that your associations are pressing the Senate to come in and pass that bill. But we did look at, some of the smaller towns that had no access to the cash that they need to buy salt, and it'd be a tragedy to have a problem or an accident or a tragedy at that point. So that's kind of the one main one is road money and local distributive fund. There's some gaming taxes that were in there. And so all told, the bill was $2.2 billion that was passed. And this is pass-through money and some other state funds that we've been able to, in a bipartisan, I think there was only one person that voted against it, and one person voted present because of conflict. And so broad support, and hopefully that will shake things through. We've worked on child care assistance that on a bipartisan basis that has done some things, and some other areas where we're starting to hopefully break the ice. And there's not a lot of time between now and the end of the year, but the votes that need to take place, I guess, from a simplified way to explain this, the vote totals change, and so it takes more to vote now than it does in January.
That's why the Senate's not meeting.
That's why the Senate's not meeting. You're precisely right. And so,
Is that correct, Carol?
My understanding from the senators is that they will probably go back to Springfield to pass this bill that
Right.
we pass. I don't, at this point, anticipate that they would not. I think there was overwhelming support on our side. I believe the same exists in the Senate, and my understanding is that if that then gets to the governor, he would sign it as well.
I would anticipate if there is more of a breakthrough come January, while we're not scheduled to go back till the middle of January, I would anticipate days being added at the very first week, maybe the second, third, whatever that Monday, Tuesday is, where we would start working on a budget itself. You
Right.
can't go forever with this.
Right.
But, okay, 4305, would that have passed if there was one more vote?
I'm sorry, would it have passed?
No, it passed.
It did
Oh, no.
pass.
It passed.
Well, which one am I thinking of with the Durkin from Chicago?
So there's different votes that took place over the
What was
weekend.
that on social?
So there's two bills that took place. The first one was in child care assistance. So the state helps working families, working mothers or fathers, to, in essence, help pay for or subsidize their child care so they can go to work. A good program, because we want people to work as opposed to just be on welfare. We didn't have the money to fund this program, so the governor, through executive order, changed the eligibility requirements to 50% match, or 50% of poverty level. And so the agreement that took place through negotiations was for 162% of poverty level. There was a bill to take it up higher. It failed, but at the end of the day, we're going to do a lot more to help working mothers to move forward and have child care.
Yeah, okay.
That was the one that you're referencing, though, where one person chose not to vote for it and it failed.
And the bottom line is what, almost 70% is social service programs and pensions?
Well, pensions
I
make
mean, the
up,
budget's already.
we got a $37 billion in spending right now. You're looking at, I would say pensions and education will make up almost 50% of our budget, quite frankly. And then you have social services and the rest. About that. Yes.
And what discussions have occurred regarding pensions, as far as how to resolve this?
So I sit on the pension committee, and I think you know that, Trustee Hebda. So what we've been doing this year is, since the Illinois Supreme Court ruling that let us know what cannot be is accepted in terms of the pension bill that was denied, and that gave us a clear direction forward. We've really proceeded with hearings in the pension committee, and no singular bill has come forward. What seems to be, instead of just focusing on the state pensions, the governor's put a proposal forward that is what we're taking hearings on. So there is something written that you can follow. But it not only looks at the 5 state pensions, but it also looks at downstate police and fire pensions. And it looks at the Public Safety Employee Benefits Act, PSEBA. It looks at a proposal to allow municipalities to have some leeway with collective bargaining and also to claim bankruptcy. My thought on that is, it is so hard to get enough people together to feel like they're doing the right thing on a pension vote because it affects so many people. My suggestion and my hope is that we stick with what the state needs to fix first before we start messing with local government. We should fix our own house first and stick with the 5 state pensions, because to mix all those other items in, I supported many of the items of the pension bill, but it's really hard to get enough votes to pass anything, so I think that has bogged it down, in my opinion. But I think we will hopefully still see something maybe from the hearings get subdivided and then hopefully in the coming years proposed and moved forward. But that's really the status.
Behind-the-scenes process is going well and going better than what you see in the public. And sometimes it's good that way. It's good to let people talk things through, because with this issue, we certainly have to be careful because we have a Supreme Court, order on what they're going to accept and what they're not. And so you've taken Governor Rauner's proposal. I do know that Senator Cullerton has not turned it thumbs down. He says there's some really good stuff in here. Maybe there's some things that I could add from my proposal. So they're trying to combine the two proposals. And I think what Representative Sente said is probably the most prudent way forward is let's work on the 5 systems and then go from there. This is exactly the process that we did when we did Tier 2. We did the 5 systems, and then we went out to the rest of the 13 systems once we saw that this is something that was going to work, it was going to pass muster. And so I think that's the way forward. And there are some fruitful discussions on that. As bad as the budget is right now, there are good discussions on a lot of other things. We just passed really meaningful unemployment insurance reform. We started in 2011 by fixing the system that was about to go insolvent, and then we added to that this year, and I think we got some great bipartisan negotiations too that the business community really likes, that still protects labor. So it's something to build upon, and that's why I keep saying we had a pretty good week last week. I hate to put things in weeks, like we had a good week, but at this point, it's been a tough year. And
Well, I guess,
And I'm sorry, before you move on, I'm glad you brought up pensions, because I think what we weren't doing or we weren't seeing so much is areas where, there's so much in the paper about the division of the parties, but in truth, the leaders on both sides, and I'll speak specifically, the governor and Speaker Madigan, both have been advocates of pension reform. So why not start with one of the biggest items that tanks our budget, that is taking up too much of the state budget, and look for a fix there when both sides want to work on it. So I think that is a clear direction for us to move forward. And as Representative Sullivan mentioned, with unemployment insurance, what's really, again, for me, a glimmer of hope, because there has not been much bipartisanship or past bills going on recently down in Springfield. And that's a little bit natural when you have a change in power. So I think we'll see things working smoothly once we get going. That's my hope. But with this unemployment insurance, this was an agreed bill, and our agreed bill process means that both sides are releasing people to come to the table and say, you can speak on our behalf. So on the business side, someone was appointed and a group of people to negotiate on the side of business and people on the side of labor. The governor knew that. The speaker knew that. They came together and they reached an agreement, and then now it's moving forward. That is an important sign, from my standpoint, that we can do that hopefully on some other areas. Now, it won't all follow an agreed bill process, but I just want to highlight that there are some areas where we agree on, and I wish we'd focus on some of those and hopefully build momentum.
one of the concerns that I personally have is we've done a budget, we approve it, we pass it, and now you're maybe going to ask us to give back to you folks. And I don't plan to do that, because I feel we've cleaned our house, we've set up our, and I think other municipalities feel the same way, and I hope that's being heard in Springfield.
You certainly are hearing, we certainly are hearing it, and I would not say your concerns aren't founded. They are.
I mean, I know everyone's got to
Sure.
give, but.
Well, and I will tell you frankly that prior to 4305, the bill that released all these funds, some of the thought was maybe we should keep those as an emergency reserve. And so you're not wrong to have a skeptical view on what's going on in Springfield. And I would hope you would continue to have a skeptical view
Because
on
we're
what's
going to be
on.
going into our process
Well,
too.
you know, the one thing you have to realize is we're now by the time we actually get to a budget, we'll be more than halfway through the year. And so any cuts that potentially need to be making a half a year's worth
What
of
if you
budget that's
don't get
remaining.
a budget? What happens then? What if you don't?
Well, states can't go insolvent, but there's going to be some serious problems. And going back to what you just said about your skeptical view on money that is owed you, I would not count on that if we don't have a budget come
Because you owe me
middle of
right now
next year.
about $400,000.
Right, and we just did pass a bill that is supported by the governor to release those funds. And so those, you know, right at this point in time, there's a bill to move that forward that we just need the Senate to take up, and then the governor's promised to sign that. So that's a good sign. But you're asking me about a hypothetical if we don't have a
When
budget.
am I going to be paid, Ed?
Yeah, well, like I said, I can't answer that until the Senate.
You mean you
No,
get paid personally?
no, the village,
What, has
when's
this
the
got something to do
village?
with your job?
No, when's the village going to be paid that money? I guess that's the question.
Well, and getting back to
Right.
this, your hypothetical is if we don't get a budget
Yeah.
next year, then, you know, my hypothetical back is I'd be very cautious about those funds.
Well, with that said, is the state going to have to float bonds again to pay the pensions? To the
At this
people that are
point,
due to the
we are, through the comptroller, Munger is doing a marvelous job with the resources that she has to try and piece together. Now, the pensions are what's called a continuing appropriation, and so they get paid before anything else. They get paid before state employees, they get paid before anything that goes on.
105 funds.
So the 5 pension funds. So
How mu-
Did you
so
say,
how much
what
is-
are they?
No, how much is paid out of the 5? You know, like the total.
it's almost $7.1 billion when you take actual money used on a year-to-year basis and then money to bring the funds up to speed in the ramp
So
of
do you
45
add
years.
that 7 billion to the other 7 billion that you
Oh, listen.
you don't have the revenue. So
Comptroller
is it
Munger
really
is-
like a $14 billion kind of deficit?
No, not yet. It's going to be $8 billion deficit at the end of this year, calendar
Calendar
year.
year,
Right.
okay.
Could it be 14 by the end of the fiscal year? I think that's a little high, but it could be 10. So what is going on, to answer your specific question about pensions, are we going to borrow to do pensions? At this point, there's no need to borrow because of a continuing appropriation. What
But
is
you may need to borrow to pay other vendors and for other programs.
At this point, there is some borrowing going on through the Illinois Finance Authority on short-term basis. There is some borrowing that has taken place through some special funds that are within state government right now. So all told, about 500 million has been borrowed that has to be paid back in a year and a half. So it's not your traditional going out on the bond market and borrowing, it's borrowing from funds within our control. Obviously, it's not something we'd like to do. To fix the FY15 budget, we had about $1.6 billion that needed to magically appear, and in that fix, there was cuts that were taking place, but then there was just funds that were swept automatically. And so those same funds we're borrowing from now, whereas we swept last year. Not a great way to run government. And so
Right.
we need the structural reforms, we need probably some revenue to come forth, and we need the same thing with cuts. And so all this is going to be taking place hopefully in January.
And when you don't need the supermajority, I'm sure it's going to get real crazy.
Well, come January 1st, there's no need for a supermajority to pass anything. It's 60
That's right.
votes. And that's why they're waiting.
That's
for-
why the Senate's on hold,
Yes,
right?
most likely.
Is that accurate, Carol?
I'm still hoping that the Senate comes before January. So some people feel like, I think there's at least a 50% chance that that could still happen and that would speed up you getting monies. So I really, I wouldn't give up on that. And I think that one of the things I would say in terms of local government and you guys coming down to Springfield and reaching out to legislators is, I think you've been very successful. If you look at the bills that legislators are putting forward to try and get LGDF to you quicker, to even there is a bill for direct deposit, for the legislators who are willing to push the leaders and say, don't hold this, this is really important. I think, going back to your question, I think that's the bright spot there also, that we hear you and don't let off the gas pedal on the pressure, but I think you have all done that very effectively, as have the organizations that represent you. And so by continuing to push, maybe you can also get that to happen in December, Mayor.
Now, do you know how much sales tax revenue do you live in town still?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Do you know how
Spend a
much?
lot of
Well, this,
money
then I'm
here.
saying this as a resident. Do you know how much we send down to Springfield in sales tax revenue?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. What is it?
North of $50 million. Probably about 60 million
Approaching
now.
60 million, yeah.
I'm just trying to share.
You get
with
my money at
Carol, I'm trying
Mariano's,
to share with you.
and I don't even live in your town.
So, we send a lot of money
Right.
to you people down there that are our representatives. We pay our fair share.
Absolutely.
So
you do.
anyway, yeah.
And so that's why Ed and I both voted for that bill, and I think you're a sponsor of it too. Ed and I have done a lot of bipartisan work together, so we want to get it back to you. And please, if there's anything else that you would like us to do, let us know.
And which pension has I guess, the most debt? I mean, that you're the furthest behind in funding?
Legislators is the
It's
most
the smallest
underfunded.
one, but
It's
it's
the smallest one,
highest
but it has the-
I mean,
percentage.
you two?
Of the percentage of underfunding,
Well, that's a material.
one for the
I'm
General
talking about
Assembly.
for the staff type people.
well, we have
What's
five,
the biggest?
we have 5 pension systems. It's a good question. It might be the state pension system, but the state pension system and the TRS pension systems are very close in the 45 to 48% range.
So
Funded.
Yes.
TRS is how much? In
Underfunded?
billions, I mean.
Well, it's going to be about a 2 billion problem of the 7, roughly.
Annually, though.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
When you add in money that needs to come in every year, plus to get us up to speed on the ramp to 2045.
And the changes that have been made, and Tom can certainly speak to this, with the younger teachers that have come into the system, the retirement has changed.
Yes.
2011, we passed a Tier 2 system.
Right, so does that affect any teacher that started in
After that
2011?
date.
After that.
After that date, yes.
What
As long as
date
you
was
have
that?
never been in the system prior to 2011,
He has a date though, right?
yeah.
It's the beginning of the year, isn't it?
So as of January 1st, 2011, if you were never in one of the 5 pension systems prior to that, and so it's your first visit to the pension system, you are now in what's called Tier 2. And so you have
Yeah.
different benefits and add-ins, things that you put in.
Retirement date. all
Is
that.
are you putting any funds into that going forward?
Sure.
Okay. But there's a higher contribution to those new
No,
teachers?
there's actually a lower contribution, but a higher contribution on our end. The General Assembly retirement system actually has the highest contribution. We contribute like 11.3% of our salary
Should
into
be
the
like
system.
25%.
Here or there, it is what it is. But, so that's, the Tier 2 going forward is a totally different system altogether. And what we're talking about now is a Tier 3 system to even reduce benefits further down the line and potentially have a mechanism where you would have your own contribution into a plan, like a 401k of some type.
But that's not in effect yet.
That is discussions that we're
No.
talking about with the governor presently.
Okay. Okay, well,
Cool.
this was special,
Anytime we can come before you,
I really
Mayor,
appreciate that
it's
you're
special.
here, and the reason I say that is because you read in the paper, and, you've got people, this sounds so trite, but they're going to Indiana to buy lotto tickets, and I know that's trite, but it's kind of sad to
Sure.
see that. And I appreciate you at least sharing, because people do watch our cable. And I think we need to let them know, we can't always attend your coffees, or some people can't go to Springfield because of their schedules. So at least let's share where we're at. If there is some positive, then let's bring it forward to let people know. But boy, I just, feel that people are really going to hold you folks to the line to
Well,
figure out.
it's been a difficult year. This last week has had a lot of breakthroughs.
So that's a
So
good
it's
thing,
it's
but-
positive moving forward, as best as you can be positive, I guess.
Sure.
But I'm hopeful. I've been around for quite a while, and you get a little cynical at times, but I'm certainly hopeful that come January we'll break
something,
through this.
so.
But not only that, I think we're setting ourselves up for some stability, and ultimately,
So,
troubleshooting and putting out fires over the last 10, 15 years has not done our state any good. And so where we can get some reforms and get budgets that are stable and get predictability back to the business world, we will have a better state for that. And that is the process that we're going through right now.
And since you mentioned the lottery with the closing comment, in that House Bill
$1 billion.
4305, were 5 of the scratch-off games that were included, so
And $1
there can
billion
be some money going
pay it.
towards
I mean, I know
people who,
that's,
I know,
here nor there, but
right.
still, it's just like,
Cool.
wow.
Well, thank you for having
Yes.
us.
Hold on, Larry, Larry's got a special announcement.
Yeah, a slight change of tone, but I get to thank Representative Sullivan today. In 2009, we had an accident. I was with my wife, my brother-in-law, and his family, and it was a bad accident. And while we were waiting for the ambulances, my wife was in incredible pain and passing out, and Representative Sullivan was nearby and provided my wife a chair. And I think, I was very worried about whether she'd make it that day, and I think that was one of the things that helped her make it. So I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, well, quite frankly, it was an accident that I came upon, and I didn't know
Right.
that Larry was, just an accident, so,
Yeah.
help where you can. Thank you,
Okay,
obviously.
thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a
Happy
nice evening.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thanksgiving.
Okay. Okey dokey. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Senior bus replacement. Dave Brown.
Thank you very much. This is a topic that has been discussed with the village board previously. Staff does understand from previous village board input that the senior bus program is very important to the village board. Previously, we made recommendations in terms of all of the different options we were pursuing. We did have discussions with PACE, put together an application, and my staff, Bob Kinney, and myself have had a chance to review that agreement. Essentially, what the agreement does not allow is for the senior bus program to be a resident-only program. If it is a resident-only program, if it is open to non-residents, it exceeds the capacity of our bus. Right now, we struggle with its capacity. This would mean we would have to add a second one. So what my recommendation is not to pursue a lease through PACE. I think it's important that we hold the program similar to what we provide now. We have been setting aside, it's interesting discussion that we just heard. This village has been setting aside reserves for the purchase of a senior bus. We have put that money away for a rainy day like this. Our senior bus, 2007 Ford bus, has over 143,000 miles on it. There's been a lot of downtime with it. When we have downtime, we are asking seniors to ride a van, which ergonomically is not set up and conducive for them to crawl in the back seat. So what we'd really like to do, and what my recommendation is that we move forward with purchasing a new senior bus. We've looked at the pricing. It's about $55,000. As I said, the money has been set aside for this, and my recommendation is that staff is requesting the village board authorization to pursue the purchase of a new senior bus, and direct staff to prepare the necessary resolution for formal village board approval. So
Is it a bigger bus, more capacity?
really, we're looking to have the same bus.
So that's good enough for the demand being put in.
It is. It
Okay.
is.
And obviously, is it handicap, is it two doors?
It does have a lift for seniors,
Yeah.
so it is handicap accessible, yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, of course it is, but, oh, yeah, all right, but the side, who makes this kind of bus?
Well, it's a
GM.
Ford
Yeah.
product, a GM, there are different ones. The one we currently have is a Ford.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you want us to take action on it tonight? We can, I mean,
Yes, really, it's staff request village board, my authorization to pursue the purchase of a new senior bus and direct staff to prepare the necessary resolution for formal village board approval.
is there a
Motion so made.
Second. First and a second? No further comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Schultz?
Aye.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Grebe?
Aye.
Trustee Williams? Trustee Hebda?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is the omnibus vote agenda. Items A through N. Is there a motion to approve A through N?
So made.
Second.
Motion is second. Comments or questions?
Just the point of information that item L is to retain our consultant or lobbyist, which is, based on what we heard tonight and what we've continued to hear,
Probably
is
need 'em.
something that it's money well spent to keep an ear to the rail.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Grebe?
Aye.
Trustee Williams? Trustee Hebda?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Unfinished business, item A, approval of village board minutes of November 3rd, 2015. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
There's a second? Motion and second, comments or questions? If none, roll call.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Grebe?
Aye.
Trustee Williams? Trustee Hebda?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
Abstain.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
I'll vote aye for the record. Unless you need me to vote. Okay. Motion carries. B, approval and passage of resolution 2015-169, resolution authorizing the approval of the execution of a non-binding memorandum of understanding between the Village of Vernon Hills and Regency Centers Corp. Or is it Regency Realty Corp? Okay.
Regency Centers.
Is that what it is, Bob?
It says Regency Centers.
It says Regency Realty Corp., but that's on this document.
Yes, we've had a discussion as recent as this afternoon, so that the document that's going to be executed is going to have the appropriate name in the document, because as you're looking at it, it does not have the appropriate name.
Okay, so it'll be Regency Centers.
LLC.
Yeah.
Regency Centers
Center
Acquisition.
Corporation.
Okay. All right.
I've received the document with the proper name on it, however, it became late and we were traveling, so
Yeah,
that's why we
okay,
don't
so,
have it.
okay, then this will be changed.
It will be. And it has been, but we weren't able to
Get it in there.
implement it yet.
Okay, Village of Vernon Hills and Regency Centers Corporation regarding the property located at the northeast corner of Milwaukee Avenue, Route 21, and Town Line Road, Route 60, which is part of the old Cuneo Estate. Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Your Honor, before you tonight is the copy of the most recent MOU, and that's marked with the A on it. And consistent with your request, the document includes the most recent series of changes that were made literally within the last 3 or 4 hours. So the document is hot off the press, and has, I think, gone a long way to addressing some of your concerns with regards to the project. I guess I would ask, if okay, I would ask that Bob kind of do a quick overview on this, and then give you a chance to read any questions or ask any questions with regards to this, or other staff members, any kind of clarification that you may be looking at before you take the vote with regards to this packet tonight.
Okay, we talked through some of these issues, but starting at the bottom of page 2, which is the first revision, this document is the version that I sent to Regency's council. They have sent a draft back that is not before us. So we're one version back. In this version, we requested that they seek reimbursement for the cost of land after they sought reimbursement for everything first. And they can't do that. The language is a little bit revised to say that we will work with Regency and come to an agreement as to how they'll be submitting, so that it'll be incorporated into the redevelopment agreement. So this particular language is not going to be deemed acceptable by Regency, but they do acknowledge the comments from last night that we discussed, and we're going to be working through the redevelopment agreement to finalize that to something that's acceptable to both sides. Going forward, we discussed the completion guarantee, and basically the issue of discussion is that we have a corporate guarantee from Regency for the retail development, but for the outlots. And we have a completion guarantee in this document, which probably results in being a bond. And the concern of staff is, if it's a bond and we have to quote-unquote fight with the bonding company to collect, and that takes time, then that time that's spent will mean we might have to dig into the general fund to pay the coverage. The residential developer is just coming on board with Regency. They've signed a contract, but they're just getting up and running. They've got to assemble all their funding sources. And so what we're going to be looking for is a guarantee, to the extent it's possible, of the same caliber, if you will, as we're getting from Regency. Now, I don't believe the residential developer can stand up here tonight and say, I can get a corporate guarantee like we're getting from Regency, but they know that that's what our goal is, and we're going to have to negotiate to see how close we can get there. And I don't know if you're in a position, Tim, to say anything tonight since it's early, but that is an issue for us.
You guys want to come up?
This is Tim Anderson from Focus, who's going to be building the residential
How you doing,
project.
Good. Well, thanks. Tim Anderson, I'm the owner of Focus Development. And all I'll say is that when we do one of these buildings, this building is probably a $70 to $75 million project. And typically we put in 30 to 35% equity. So you're looking at somewhere around $21 to $25 million of equity, and that comes from institutional sources. Our last, we've done 4 deals in a row with the Carlyle Group out of DC, which is a private equity, publicly traded private equity firm. Their funds range from, that they fund these deals with, range from $2 billion to $4 billion in size. So that kind of player coming into an investment is capable of providing significant guarantees. But at this point in time, we don't have that locked down to say what that looks like exactly. So,
But what I will say from our perspective is it's substantially different knowing, one, that there is a residential developer, or as opposed to who the residential developer is, one
Right.
with a great reputation. So that's the first part. And the other is to know that how they have been funding their projects in the past and having an investor with the same type of financial background backing that Regency has, in my personal opinion, goes a long way towards assuaging my concerns about the completion bond and being stuck fighting with the bonding company. Negotiations will go on in the redevelopment, and we'll be coming back on that issue, but
That does happen, though.
yes, it does. It absolutely does.
I mean, as opposed to a letter of credit.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
well, in the letter of credit, I'm sure Mr. Anderson here will tell us that, it can screw up your total line across the board, So a bond is acceptable. I know we can't accept them, but in essence, but you're talking about going even further than that to get the type of guarantee that we think we have with Regency.
Right, and it's during the period of getting these buildings completed so that they're generating the tax increment that we're basing our bond on. That's the time, once that.
Well,
building's
you'd
up-
finish these in how quick would you finish them? Well, you'd have to have, substantial completion of their project.
we just did a project in Glenview at Waukegan and Gulf, which was 239 units, and
Yeah.
we had first occupancies in 15 months from starting, and last ones in about 17 months.
Yeah.
So that's about the time frame for this project as well, is what we would expect.
Yeah,
And
I
in
mean-
that case, we are, we start with completion guarantees and funding for the whole entire capital stack from the lender and the equity sources. So the funding is all there to do the project before we put a shovel in the ground, of course.
Yeah. Do you have any partners we know?
I've done a number of deals with Mr. Taxman, who you well know, and actually, we built the Vernon Hills Town Center
Sure.
retail and the apartment building there.
So is Cy involved?
Cy is not involved currently in this deal, no.
Well, currently, that does.
But who knows, I
could-
don't know.
that could
Cy-
change.
We've done a lot of stuff with
Yeah.
Cy and had
Yeah.
some good success with him.
Well, and the reason I bring up Cy is, what he did do when the whole, recession took place. He put the shell up primarily with his own money. And that kept that whole project going at TIF, as opposed to Opus, which he's now purchased.
Right.
Within reason, right? But in essence, yeah, okay. So this is a $75 million to do the,
The apartments,
yeah,
70 to
including,
75.
obviously the land cost and then your,
Soft costs, carry,
Everything.
everything, all in.
yeah, okay, yeah. So that's about, and what would that, are we even at a point where we have a drawing? Are these,
No.
yeah, okay.
Too early.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
We got a block, yeah, we got a.
We got a black, that's right, we saw that last night, okay.
So there's that piece. The other item I just want to bring to your attention is, there's two, we talked, wait, I covered the two entities, right? That it's in the name of one, but, so, and the money entity of Regency is providing the guarantee. So although they're going to have a single-purpose entity building the project like all developers do, we are getting the guarantee from the money partner, if you will. Let's see, what else, John? Page 4, we've set up 3 different possible payouts, if you will, for the, if we have to call on the guarantee. And it would be mutually agreed among the parties as to which option it is. The first option is the village's direct and verifiable out-of-pocket cost expenses incurred by the village from third-party consultants, financial obligations attributable to the study.
Which page you on, Bob?
Page 4. I'm at in the second half.
The middle of it.
Of the top paragraph. Feasibility determination, issue of bonds, or ultimate funding of the TIF bonds. Or the village's direct and verifiable out-of-pocket cost expenses incurred by the village from third-party consultants and financial obligations attributable to the village completing the construction of the retail construction obligations and the residential construction obligations, which expenses shall include without limitation for the payment of a construction management fee if we wanted to complete the projects from whatever stage they were in. Or the third option is such other liquidated damage provision as may be mutually acceptable by the village, retail developer, and residential developer. So we've put some options in here. There'll clearly be further discussion as we work towards a redevelopment agreement, but we've got a little bit of flexibility of the types of relief, if you will, that we can choose from. We also, in that small paragraph that starts with the terms of each guarantee, is that the guarantees will be in place prior to the bond issuance so that we're not out until without our guarantee coverage. And then that the guarantees remain in place if either the retail or residential developer sells the property, the guarantees remain in place until replaced by a guarantor with similar assets as Regency and whatever entity is.
That short paragraph, though, it talks within the original text about the tax exempt nature. But with the guarantees in place, we were kind of led to believe that.
I'm sorry, the last part, Jim?
We were led to believe that because with the guarantees in place, that during a period of time, it would not be tax exempt and there would be a cost for refinancing or reissuance of tax exempt bonds after the fact.
Well, what this says is that we don't issue the bonds until the guarantees are in place. If we can't get guarantees and have a tax exempt bond, we'll sit down with the developers and work a solution to that because we don't have to issue bonds without a guarantee. They're not going to be able to get tax exempt bonds, arguably. They won't be able to get tax exempt bonds with a guarantee. So they're aware, we're all aware of the issue.
Right, it's just that this really doesn't say that. You've added a few more words to make that clear, which I understand that being our agreement and our thought process going forward, but.
Well, we can add language before execution because the resolution before you is subject to village attorney approval, and we can work with Regency to come up with language that.
Yeah, I think we were all in agreement that the guarantee was to get the vertical construction done. Once we got past that, we would then look to convert those instruments into a tax-exempt instrument. So there needs to be some acknowledgement that there'd be a taxable instrument and hopefully, or no, not hopefully, but at a point in time, a conversion to a tax-exempt instrument.
Right.
So, Matt, are you willing to?
Larry and Nikki, and the infrastructure improvements, say it is 14 million, as was bandied about a bit last night.
15.
How much?
15.
Okay, sorry. The 15, wouldn't that be tax exempt?
It could be.
Huh?
It could be.
Okay.
I have to give that caveat because I can't promise that without our bond counsel reviewing this agreement because the devil's in the details.
Okay.
In theory, it's a two-pronged test. If it's private use and it's private funding, then it has to be taxable. So if you can split out all of the public infrastructure that would all be either off-site or completely public areas, public use, then yes, you could make that portion of the issue tax
Well,
exempt.
is that a function, what's the width of these streets gonna be, Dave? I mean, 27 back to back?
25?
I haven't seen a plan
Yeah,
that shows that, but our typical two-way drive would be 24 with curbs, so 27 feet.
Okay, and the issue there with those roads, those are gonna be private roads?
I believe that's what they're proposing,
Okay.
is it to be private roads.
But at the TIF district, at 45 and 21, is there any private roads there?
No. Those are public.
Yeah, okay.
Town
Well,
Center, Burn Boulevard, Port Clinton Road.
right, I like that Burn
I
Boulevard.
thought you might.
Yeah, it's kind of special. But in essence, well, you know, does that make any sense here?
To do public roads?
I mean, can any of
I
these
would-
roads in here be public?
I would say no,
I'm just asking.
because why would we want to take on the maintenance responsibility? That would be the question that I would pose. The other part of this, again, going back to taxable versus tax exempt, is you're asking for a guarantee on the improvements that they're doing here. Therefore, it does, based on what we heard last night, make it a taxable bond for a short period of time. And I think Trustee Schultz kind of was getting there. It may be one of those things where we do a 20-year bond with a 5-year call.
Right.
It
Well, I
costs us
know
a
we
little
got
bit,
into that, yes.
and it's a taxable, but it costs us a little bit extra money on the front, and then we go to a tax exempt after that for the balance that's remaining.
Okay, so
So-
the possibility that definitely exists then, that the whole, most of the infrastructure improvements on this site are gonna be taxable to start,
During the
That's what it appears to be, the way it's structured.
other than what's out on Milwaukee Avenue or out on 60.
No, even that, because
No,
it's the
even that too.
guarantee.
No,
There's a third prong, right?
no.
It's
If-
two-pronged.
No, if one of those prongs is met, then it's tax-free. So even if it's a private guarantee, but it's public infrastructure, if it's actually public infrastructure, then it would be tax-free.
So it'd have to be on everybody's right-of-way.
Right,
Well,
on a
Easement
government
right-of-way.
Government right-of-way, yeah.
Yeah.
Another way to say that is that you have to meet both of those criteria to make it taxable. So if it's private use, private funding, it's taxable. So you would have to, in order to have any portion of it tax exempt, it would have to be completely isolated. One of those conditions could not exist.
Yeah.
What the IRS will not let you do is play with that to bypass a taxable status. So they do look at this very
So
closely.
for 4 or 5 years, we would be paying obviously a much higher
For 4 or
principal
5
and
years.
interest payment.
You would. During the period of time, we would use capitalized interest to make the bond payments. So you'd be paying a higher interest rate, and then at a point where the board was satisfied with the functionality of the project, we would remove that guarantee and restructure the bond to be tax exempt.
And there'd be one additional execution cost in the neighborhood of $250,000 plus or minus.
Correct.
So based on last night's math, we were 24 million, we're up to 25 million now. But that's,
We were always at 25 million.
all right, then we're up to 26.
Yeah, I mean,
One
to
way or the
get
other.
20 net, it's gonna cost us roughly 25.
No, I think it was only going to cost us 23 yesterday,
We were-
and change, and then it went
We
to
were looking at
24.
24. We were looking at 24 in the KMA report,
Right,
and it's gone
Okay.
up since then.
and now we're up to 25.
All right, what else? Anybody else have any questions? My question is the staff. Is staff comfortable and recommends us, to pass this tonight?
No.
Does staff have a recommendation?
Well, I
Your
thought,
Honor, can Bob finish, and then
Yeah,
we'll
sure.
get to that.
All right.
Okay, the only other provision of note is on page 4, paragraph D. When we get to the completion of the projects from the perspective of the guarantees, we are going to, in both cases of both residential and retail, the developers will be having either architect or engineer, depending on what issue is involved, whether it's architectural or engineering. We're going to have an architect and/or engineer involved, and they will meet to determine whether or not there's substantial completion. And if those two experts can't agree, they will choose a third, and the third will make that determination. Now, that's for the substantial completion to allow them to release the guarantee. But one way to look at that is, if we're just arguing as to whether or not it's substantially completed, that means those buildings exist. And the fear that we have, at least going in today, is that it's delayed in getting done. But if that building's up there and we're just arguing about substantial completion, they're pretty close. So,
Well, you know, I mean, getting back to some of the discussion last night, basically, you guys are doing this with your own money. Mike is that. Yeah, you mean, you're doing it with your own money. You know, so that's not a bad thing.
Matt Hendy with Regency Centers. Yeah, for the retail portion, Regency will fund it out of our
Right.
line of credit, which is cash.
And is it Tim Anderson?
yeah.
And as Tim had said, I mean, they're gonna you have 35% equity, you're gonna have even more than that. I mean, Matt,
We'll be 100%
yeah,
equity.
yeah, you know. That's like recession kind of financing. Okay, all right, Bob, keep going.
I think that completes the revisions that we've made since the meeting last night.
Okay, trustee Cook.
I still don't want to buy land. I just don't. It's not my fault that the people that own that land are selling it at an outrageous price. And I don't think that's an unfair word. I mean, $21 a square foot for dirt is expensive. If I was going to pay that much a square foot, it should have something on it when I buy it. I'm really not sure I can support this as it goes forward if we've got to help pay for the land. I just don't, it makes it too big a bite for us. It makes it too big a number. And I know that creates a significant problem for you guys. I'm not saying I'm an absolute no right now, but basically that's the point I'm at, that I just don't want to be in the land business. The 14, 15 million or so for both off-site and on-site infrastructure, I got no problem with whatsoever. I just don't want to be in the land business.
Trustee Schultz.
At this juncture, I don't see any reason not to go forward. It's a big number, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that's our entire reserve. But then again, everything that the consultant said, even though the numbers were skinny, although he did have a certain amount of fluff in there, but there's always the variability of interest rates. But then there's good potential of some additional sales tax revenue coming in. So based on that at this juncture, because we're just giving you the go-ahead to take the next step, I don't have a problem voting yes tonight.
All right, okay, that's fine. Anybody else want to comment
Well, and I just want
on
to
this
clarify,
before I call for a
I
vote?
agree with you to an extent, and I was saying it more based on, I really don't, I mean, this is a non-binding memorandum of understanding, but for me to just vote yes on it without expressing that concern would be unfair to you. And I want to make sure you know exactly where I'm coming from. Whether I vote yes or no on this memorandum of understanding is irrelevant because it's non-binding. We could pull the plug at any time. But to be honest with you, I got to let you know exactly where I'm coming from, so.
And Your Honor, maybe a couple of questions or comments from the staff, if that would be okay.
Yeah, that would welcome it.
I think, as several of you have said over a number of discussions, and I'm going to do a couple of remarks, and I'm going to throw it at Larry and Nikki because I know they have a couple of comments too. We're talking about almost $25 million of an incentive for a project, and that's a substantial number for this village to take on. And we have great developers, and I think they will be great partners. We've got experience with one of them in the TIF district, and we've seen how they perform,
Right.
and I think Regency has a great track record and everything like that. But saying that, the $25 million is substantial, and the concern maybe not necessarily in the short term, but in the long term, what we've seen occur both with the economy and what we've experienced in our own TIF district in the past gives me pause. You know, we were fortunate to have a partner down there that took on some risk and helped lead us on the way, but, you know, and we were fortunate there, but at some point, a lot of this is going to be on us. You know, once the guarantees go away, it's on us, and we have to ride the wave, you know, up or down as we go. You know, I guess I point back to some of the projects that you all have agreed to assist over the past 7 years or so. And, you know, you've made what we have termed as strategic investments in those properties and those areas where we saw significant vacancies in Hawthorne Hills Square, and we saw, you know, Home Expo empty, and, you know, there was a lot of leadership that was brought forth to put businesses into those, and there was incentives that were provided. But those incentives were provided in a pay-as-you-go type of arrangement. And it was one of those where the village agreed that we're willing to help, but you must perform, and we will then reward you for that. So the risk was put forth on the developer. And, you know, the most recent one obviously is Westfield and the $10 million we did there, and the short-term agreement that we did with them, you know, the 10 years and the like. And, you know, that was saying, we support you, we want you here, we want you to do it, but you know what, we want you to do this as a pay-as-you-go. And that was extremely important to this board, I think, moving forward.
Which is all the sales tax agreements we did during the Great Recession, that's all they were.
Exactly. That's exactly
You know.
right. And, well,
Yeah.
and then we had the TIF district down here.
Yeah, well, yeah, we.
So, and that, you know, that one, we were fortunate in many
Yeah,
respects.
well, you know, I mean,
So,
somebody had a good balance sheet. It
yeah,
was slightly liquid.
that's true. It's very true.
Well, you got-
And but we're still shoveling down there,
I know.
still
Well, I
working
know.
on getting our way out
But
of
we're
that.
gonna, you know, we're gonna have more increment coming in here in the not too distant future.
And we're hoping that will be used to pay the bonds down and keep our debt service.
Even though Larry's told me we're doing okay now. But
So-
2 years from now, we gotta start tapping the general fund.
Well,
If these 27 townhouses get built, we probably don't.
yeah,
Oh,
knock
okay.
on wood, so.
All right.
So anyway, those are my general concerns. I mean, we've always said, strategic investment, we're willing to do it, but it's on you, we pay you as you go forward. That's
Yeah.
not the case here. We're talking about $25 million.
Well, I mean, I could play devil's advocate, which I'm probably pretty good at. You know, there's an issue, you know, and I'm not gonna read Trustee Cook's mind, but, you know, the individual who you're partnering with, you know, they're not gonna hold any tag days for that guy. I don't know how far I should go, but if somebody,
Well,
you know, I mean, and the reason, I guess part of the reason I say that with him, is that they wanted to actually sell us the golf course acreage, which was, you know, I don't know, 220 acres, okay? At 20 grand a pop, you know? And I think I used the word that's considered an F-bomb, since we were gonna improve every one of those frickin' lots over there by building the golf course, okay? And we wouldn't get anything in return, so you know, we finally came down to, go ahead and build it. You know, rat hole the, you know, 300,000 per hole, and, you know, all the, you know, the tunnels and the driving range and the buildings, and all of a sudden you're up to maybe just shy of 10 million bucks, okay? But we weren't gonna underwrite John Cuneo, okay? And we didn't underwrite the golf course because, God bless Ray Plody, I was introduced to him, and Ray did all the leasehold improvements. So we didn't spend a nickel on that. And maybe that's where, you know, I don't want to read anybody's mind, but, you know, John hasn't bent over backwards for anybody. And that's why we're kind of in the situation we were with Pulte. Because, you know, we don't want a white elephant, you know, if Loyola takes a walk and there's like millions of dollars in just, you know, infrastructure improvement, maintenance in that house. And I'm not talking remodeling it, and I'm not talking about touching up the frescoes, you know? This is like just making the roof stop leaking, and the windows, you know, that you know, bleed cold air in the winter, and the lace curtains freeze, you know? This guy didn't spend a nickel. The best thing that happened to that joint, you can quote me on this, Mick, was my best friend's wedding. At least they put a coat of paint on the joint. So anyway, okay, go ahead.
And I guess at this point, I'll throw it at Nikki and Larry for just additional comments and any questions that you may want to ask them.
And let me just, I'll mention a little bit of history on the TIF, in that we did not commit our general obligation or our full faith and credit to the TIF until we kind of had a sense it was really coming. I mean, it would have been messy to get out of it, there's no question about it, but we kind of held back. And, you know, I'll just mention, I mean, this is risk and reward, and it's a tough decision, but, I mean, the reward is, I mean, this is a fabulous development proposed, and it's, you know, it's going to be good for our retailers if it widens our market area. The risk is that basically we're leading with our general obligation debt, at least once we get to the point that, you know, we have to do that. And that general, so basically there are two things that are going to back this up: the TIF revenues and the backing of the general obligation debt, which is, you know, the tax levy, which we do absolutely everything we can to make sure that doesn't have to be there, that doesn't have to be extended. And
Would this bring our actual bonds floated over $50 million?
No.
Well, what do we, like with the Nike site or / VHAC and the TIF? There's still money's owed on those properties.
Right. Right now we have about $21 million of outstanding debt. So we'll be.
Okay, so we go 25.
Yeah. So
Getting close.
So we'll be 46, and, you know, and I think you'll address this, but, you know, I think if we need to do much more, then yes, we're going to cross 50 million.
Right, for example, if we go forward with some of those intersection improvements in and around the business park, and we're gonna have to float bonds for some of that.
Right.
Right?
Right, but.
Unless the council of mayors gives us more money we can dream.
But just so we keep in mind, you know, the TIF laws can change. we're out there for 20 years. I mean, there's a lot that can change in terms of our revenue stream from this, but the one thing that's probably not going to change is that, that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to be on the hook for something approaching $2 million. So, I mean, that
A year in debt
a
service,
year in debt service, right?
just for this.
Right, just for this project,
Yeah.
right? So that, I mean, that,
And by that time, you know, what year did you say that was? 20,
Oh.
20,
oh, 20.
2025, 2030, something?
Well,
Is it 2030?
well, we issued the bonds in 2016, so it's 2036.
Okay.
I
By that time, there'll be like drones just dropping it on your front porch, right? You know. Okay, and you know, a 20-year TIF is a 20-year TIF. The other TIF is 23 years.
Right, actually, it's
And-
a 23-year life.
What is it?
23-year life. but-
Right. And exactly, we had that discussion, you know, not that you would want to do that, but you could actually take these out to 35 years. Is that any better?
Well, on a 20-year bond, I don't know if that helps too much. I mean, it might help us recover after the fact.
Right. Okay, Joe, you want to say anything?
If you
Yeah,
don't mind,
sure,
I just have
sure,
a few things.
Hey, you have your name up here now.
Oh,
It's
that's
nice.
good. Thank you. A couple items, I know Trustee Schultz already touched on this. Just the concerns that we have. There is an additional cost associated with the taxable bonds up front. To a certain extent, the call option is worth it if we do
Right.
have that approach, because the offset would be the guarantee. The other concern, and I know we touched on this in the meeting yesterday, is the residential component. You know, obviously, we're working through the wording on the MOU to protect ourselves, but that does represent a third of the EAV. That's a large portion of the
Yeah.
project. So at about $2 million per year, I think, you know, the projections show that we're running about 1-to-1 coverage ratio, which means, you know, we're having as much revenue come in as what we're anticipating in debt service. So at a $2 million levy or property tax revenue that's coming in, that residential component's about $650,000 a year. So it's very important that that goes through and it goes through well. The other item, and that we talked about this a little bit yesterday, are the assumptions on the EAV. KMA took a very conservative approach. They're assuming a 2% growth in EAV every year, consistent across the life of the project. That's not what we're seeing in Vernon Hills. It's not what we've seen in 5 years. You know, our EAV, in fact, has been dropping. And I don't think anyone's questioning that if you take an open field and you build a shopping mall, of course the EAV is going to jump. But long-term, you cannot control whether or not people will appeal their taxes. You cannot control the environment that we live in that the EAV is dropping. So that is kind of a concern with a close ratio if you're projecting that the revenue is going to continue to grow at 2% per year.
Except if you know, if you sell and buy a Mariano store.
True.
EAV went up pretty good.
That could change. That could change.
Okay, well, all right.
And just my last point, and just thoughts to consider as we go around, as what we heard earlier this evening, is the uncertainty of the state. We don't know what they're going to do in property taxes, and that could affect the bills that they have floating around right now that are proposing freezes in property taxes. That might affect our ability to issue bonds, period. So that could affect the structure of it, and there's no way to anticipate that. Unfortunately, all we can do is wait
Well,
and
yeah, but
see
with
what
that
that's
said,
gonna mean.
I guess we're all taking that risk, though. Yeah.
Everyone is taking that risk.
You know.
Well,
Oh,
to that
sorry.
particular point, though, when we had our discussion 4 or 5 weeks ago, I thought we said that we could, in fact, institute those property taxes, and they would not be subject to a freeze because they're already statutorily granted.
That is what
The current
the current
legislation.
status is. What we heard today from our bond counsel is the bills that are floating around right now set a freeze that would include those already established levies. So it would be based, the freeze would be based off of a 0% increase on a levy that you already have extended. So because we have been abating the levies on all of our debt service, we are set at 0. So if we do not extend any of those levies and this bill goes forward, we won't have that option.
That's the first call you make tomorrow morning to Morrill and Associates.
And just kind of building on that concept with the state, and Larry touched on this yesterday, if there's any changes in the school funding, you know, again, this is not something that's certain. These are just points to consider that we don't know, you know, what's going to happen with these. But if school funding formula changes, if for some reason the levies go down, that would affect the amount of increment that we would be eligible for. The other thing is, you know, Spear touched on this yesterday, is the motor fuel tax, the LGDF, how that could affect our fund balance. And if we do see a permanent loss of those funds and they don't have a budget and they do a permanent sweep and we do start cutting into our general fund balance, that's a very real effect on our credit rating. So that would also raise the cost of borrowing. That's something that we have to consider, you know, especially if we go through this, we see the state cycle through this budget struggle again. Those are challenges that we could be facing along with a $2 million debt service bill. So just some concerns. And it's not the actual issuance of the $24 million that's the problem. It's the effect on our finances. So if any of these estimates are off and we do end up cutting into the general fund balance, that is where our higher debt ratio will come into consideration with the rating agencies. Of, okay, now you have a high debt ratio and you're cutting in the general fund balance. These are some large red flags that we need to take into consideration going forward.
How about this one? Internet sales, there's been a moratorium on that at the federal level for what, 20 years now? How much revenue would that generate? It'd be enormous.
Yeah, but it would be distributed through a use tax, which is a per capita tax. So,
Well, wouldn't the state benefit from that?
yeah, yeah, definitely the state
Well,
would
you
benefit,
know,
yeah.
I mean, we're not talking pocket change here.
No, not
You know,
at
and
all.
somebody's got a much stronger lobby than the bricks and mortar guys, apparently. You follow that? Got a lobbyist?
I've been to Washington to lobby on that behalf. We want to even the playing field between bricks and mortar, which.
Who's the fly in the ointment there? I mean, who's the linchpin in the Congress, in the Senate?
Senator Durbin's been, I think, a champion of it. We
I
couple-
mean the tax?
Yeah, the idea is, you know, ICSC, the International Council of Shopping Centers, is the parent kind of organization that all the retailers and folks who own retail deal with. And they've been a strong proponent for a long time of evening the playing field between bricks and mortar stores,
Right.
which are charged tax, versus internet. You know, you want to even the playing field, and all of the retailers, you know, for the most part, it makes sense for them to support it because it keeps internet sales more in line with, you know, an even playing field.
Of course, all the retailers are doing internet sales too. Yeah. It's a tangled web.
Yeah, the last I heard was from Representative Roscom when he addressed that issue, because the Senate, I believe, has passed the bill, the marketplace fair tax, whatever. But it was held up in the House because it was considered a new tax, and that was an anathema to the Tea Party and the majority of the members of the House.
Yeah.
And Roscom said they were looking for language to assuage their fears that this was not a new tax, but a revenue stream that should be collected to, in
Yeah.
fact, create the fairness.
Okay, Joe.
In regards to Trustee Cook's earlier comment, and this goes back to our conversation yesterday, the agreement before you is non-binding, but it's important to note that this has been considered a handshake agreement and such that the developer is looking for agreement either, they much rather have a quick no than a no down the road. And I know that's something that they've said from day one. I just want to make sure the trustees are aware that, this is something that, while it's not a binding MOU, is certainly something they're looking for a good faith effort that the village
Yeah,
board will
okay,
move.
that's a nice comment. They understand our track record with developing residential, business parks, and retail. I mean, we're tapping almost 4 million square feet. So you guys should have a comfort level with what we're discussing up here, which is basically CYA, because it's not our money, it's the people's money, but with that said, we kind of like retail. We don't mind development, and especially if it's done right. And so, and staff's very good at, I guess, supervising that process, and we're not that bad either, got a lot of diversification up here. So, with that said, does anybody else want to say anything on this at all? Okay. What's the exact language we need here, Bob? Should I just,
Read
the approval? Do you want me to
I
just
think-
read, just want me to use the, item B?
Yeah, it would be B.
Yeah, I think the language from B, authorize approval and pass.
Yeah, subject to about 300.
Right, and the only difference would be the agreement is between Vernon Hills and Regency Centers Acquisition LLC
All right.
instead of Regency Centers Corporation.
Corporation.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve and the passage of Resolution 2015-169, a resolution authorizing and approve the execution of a non-binding memorandum of understanding between the Village of Vernon Hills and Regency
Centers
Center.
Acquisition LLC.
Regency Center Acquisition LLC regarding the property located at northeast corner of Milwaukee Avenue, Route 21, and Town Line Road, Route 60. Is there a motion to approve? Can I make it?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
So made.
Second.
Motion is second. Roll call.
Trustee Green?
Aye.
Trustee Williams? Trustee Hebda?
Well, I would love to see you. I just really can't support this at this point. I'm going to be honest with you. I think you're a great place. I'd love to have you come back, but I need to see something different. So I'm going to say no. It's just too big of a risk for me personally to sit up here and take. So I'm sorry, no.
Trustee Schultz?
As I said earlier, there's nothing holding me back tonight. Boy, it'd be nice if it was a sales tax agreement. But with that being said, I vote aye.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
No.
President Byrne?
Aye. Motion carried. Okay. All right. Item, oh, yeah, go ahead.
One of the things we talked about last night, when you talked about the Army Corps and that other land, if there's any way any of that land could be used for parks and passive recreation for people in the community, now I might be more amenable to buying some land. But if it turns out to be Army Corps floodplain that can only be used by squirrels, then,
We can't touch it.
yeah. So that's something that we can, if we can possibly look
We
into.
got floodplain, floodway all up and down the
Oh, yeah,
CV
but I mean-
drainage ditch.
Yeah, it
Don't
wouldn't be the first time I saw something in the famous,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
100-year flood that happens every 2-3 years, so.
Yeah. Okay, all right, the motion carries.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll be seeing a lot more of each other. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, then, what's next? The approval and passage of resolution 2015-164, resolution authorizing the approval of insurance coverage with the Illinois Municipal League. Now, is this, we want to go with the min-max?
This is the annual renewal of our property casualty workers' comp liability insurance.
Yeah.
They have presented us with two options, as the mayor's referring
Every year they
to. First option is a min-max option. Actually, I should start with the normal contribution. The minimum contribution is listed at $594,000. We would, if the board elects to go with the minimum maximum contribution, you would pay the $594,000 now, and then we would see how the years would go. IML will project our claims experience going forward, and if we exceed, is it 100% of what they are expecting us to pay out in a year, we would have an additional exposure up to $809,000. Exceed 80%, excuse me. So our maximum contribution could go as high as $809,000, or it could go as low as $504,000.
Does everybody have the spreadsheets?
No, let me distribute that.
Yep.
Yeah, I know, but is everybody, so not everybody, I know this was evolving because of, you know, a conversation we had, what, was it yesterday or Friday? Had to be Friday.
Both Friday and yep,
Friday.
Thursday and yesterday and.
Thursday and yesterday and a couple weeks ago. So we have had ongoing discussions about this. The other option would be to just contribute a flat premium amount of $659,000. That would be our total exposure, and that would be the premium period for the year. Historically, the village has done the normal contribution. There was a period of time between 1997 and 2002 that we did participate in the min-max program. Larry, do you want to talk a little bit about our experience during that time period?
Can I raise a question here? This decision has to be made by what? The payment on the options by the 20th?
We are trying to go for approval this evening because if the village pays the contribution by November 20th, we realize a 1% discount. And on a $600,000 premium, that we are talking about significant dollars there.
So.
Quick math, thank you.
So we were, that's a good point. So we were on the min-max program from 1997 to 2002. And during the last 3 years of that program, we actually lost about $20,000 versus if we had paid a fixed premium. Now, I mean, if you look at our history, there are periods when our being on the fix has been attractive, or has been, the min-max would have been attractive. In the last 3 years, we would have picked up $190,000. On the other hand, for the 10 years from 2000 to 2009, we would have lost $160,000. And the min-max program is worse than it used to be because at the time, you would do a range. If normal is what you pay for your fix, you'd be of a range of 20% below to 20% above. Now it's 15% below to you could pay up to 30% above. So they've kind of stacked the deck against us a little more.
Well, can I make a suggestion? I mean, we can, okay, today is the 16th? 17th. I mean, we could, we can vote on this however everybody feels, but we might still have to have a conversation. And what I'm thinking is, okay, the minimum we're paying in is what, the $594?
Correct.
Yeah. And so the difference is about
$60,000.
$60,000. But if we have losses that are like next to nothing, and let me explain to everyone, this is our total claims history. It's not just work comp, it's the general liability. It's the 1.5 mil, if you look there, that's the Hobbs decision, which I don't know where that was at one time, but they finally found it.
Right.
But you're not exposed for, if the occurrence was 5 years ago, it's not going to roll into this year's, payouts. It's going to go back to that 5 year, the date of the accident, okay? So, you know, we're looking here, let's see, what do we have last year? You know, we paid like, 45,000.
Year-to-date this year,
Yeah, well, we got about a month left.
year-to-date being October 1st.
Yeah, now, is there any, but I don't think all our large losses are, you know, back 2, 3, I was surprised then, one of the police officers, it went back,
2012.
no, some of it
large
went back even further, without mentioning names. You know, and there's a PSEBA hearing and crazy stuff going on. But with that said, you know, I would like to just go back to them and say, hey, listen, we'll go into it, but can you give us another 20 or 30 grand, you know, as far as the downside? I mean, they made a lot of money this year, potentially off of us, you know? And so, I'm just thinking, you know, we got a dialogue going. We've actually gotten to know those people down there, you know, which is a good thing. And just see, you know, if we can, I don't know, you know, just tweak it a little bit. You know, I mean, I'm not adverse going with this min-max, you know? I'd feel better if we were gonna actually save more money.
So you'd like the resolution then to be based on final negotiations to be determined prior to first payment?
Yeah, which we got a day or two.
But if we put in the amount that's the fixed, the min would be lower. Of course, at some point, if we have a bad year, we might have to amend that.
Yeah, and we'd have to track the money to keep it.
Right.
Right? I mean, we're their biggest customer, just so everybody knows. We are their biggest customer.
The resolution is structured so that the amount would not to exceed 809,000, which would be the maximum amount that we would put out if we elected to go to the min-max. But there is an agreement that would have to be executed, which is authorized within the resolution, if we go with the min-max.
Right.
That, you know, you're basically
which would-
committing to this program. The other element that I failed to mention earlier was that if we do enter into the min-max program, it would likely be a multi-year commitment because you will have high years and you will have low years, and it would take several years to recover from the high years. So the decision we make today would likely be.
It'd be kind of refreshing if we didn't have high years with these work comp claims. Which, you know, some of them, you know, I think have to be more aggressively pursued.
All right, so you're looking for a motion to approve item A here, and really, there's nothing left to say about it. It can stand alone because you'll try and negotiate a
And
lower
we,
rate.
you
So-
know, we could come back to you, just say, hey, we're going with the guaranteed cost,
So
you know.
therefore, I move to adopt item A.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further comments or questions? If not, roll call, please.
Trustee Williams? Trustee Hebda?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Grebe?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, so I better be here tomorrow sometime.
Yeah. Yep.
To have some more chats.
You can help John make the phone call to Morrill and Associates.
Yeah, I trust John's ability to do that on his own. But yeah, I haven't talked to him in a while. He's not doing it anyway. It's Fiedler.
Yes, yeah, Kurt.
Okay, next is, is there any new business or,
Yes.
okay, other items?
Resolution authorizing approval of insurance, yeah, I did that, and other items.
We've already approved it.
I know, it says.
Well, yeah, just other, well, the other items is new business or communication, you know. Yeah, trustee Schultz.
Two things I wanted to bring up was, I had the pleasure of attending the Indian community of Vernon Hills Diwali celebration last Saturday night with County Board Chairman Lawler, and my bride, and several others. And it was marvelous. They did an outstanding job at explaining and celebrating their culture and the holiday itself of Diwali, and the upcoming, at that time, upcoming Children's Day celebration, which is a large event in India. And it was a marvelous time, and they are, in fact, pursuing a nonprofit status for a community organization as a nonprofit to further enhance their community activities and promote their culture in town. And it was quite enjoyable. And there was a lot of kids there.
Where do they have their church? Where's their church at that they go to?
Well, there's not a temple in town. I'm
I
not
know.
sure that. I know my neighbors went to a facility down in Elmhurst. I'm not sure where, in fact, most of the community worships at. But and they're a very young and vibrant community. Have a lot of kids at that event, and they had a little talent show, and it's quite enjoyable. The other thing I wanted to bring up was I've seen it pop up, and in fact, across the street, looking out on Route 45 is some of the decorations that have been put up on the golf course and other locales in town, and we'll have the tree lighting, I guess, week from Saturday. And ergo, the holiday season is upon us, and Ed's team looks like they've done an outstanding job. I'll refrain from the Lights of Paris comment again, but it looks like they've done a very, very nice job of distributing what we had that was still functional and adding to it from the Winter Wonderland Light Show. And it looks like it's turning out rather nice, and I'll be thrilled to see it all when it's all lit up and good to go. That's it.
Trustee Hebda.
Actually, my comments, I was telling Dave earlier, and the board should know that, had residents tell me that they're excited and very pleased to see us use these decorations.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a good thing.
nice.
So I guess we did what we needed to do, and they're very pleased with what's going on. So that's kind of nice to hear. So that was just what I wanted to share.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, Trustee Markwart.
All I want to say is out of the police department with its remodeling that we went through on Saturday at 10 o'clock, absolutely fantastic. The facility is unbelievable, and I think our police force is extremely happy with it. I'm very happy with what we see.
One correction that was for Saturday was the bathrooms and shower facilities are just okay. They're just okay.
Not clubhouse quality? Okay. Anybody else?
But it was, very seriously, to echo what Trustee Markwart said, that it is incredible.
Yeah.
You maximize the amount of space they are using.
Yep.
I didn't see any wasted space there. Chief, we're talking about your facility. Yeah, it was a well-done job on everybody's part, our police department, Public Works, the contractors that we had, Hesner Group, and that. Boy, it just turned out sensational, and it's a great facility.
Well, and I think it's important to point out too that it was really a team effort in doing this. I mean, and it was really a great effort on the part of the staff in the police department and working through the interior spaces and defining the needs and everything like that. And Dave's people to get them out of there and not bringing a lot of that crap or stuff back. and then finally, a big kudo to Mike Atkinson for driving the bus on this whole thing. And he, outstanding job, working with MTI and Rick Davies and those folks like that. It really went smooth.
You haven't gotten the tour from the chief whenever, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago. Physically, is it almost 4,000 square feet where was utilized in a
Yeah,
different way?
about between 45 and 5,500 square feet were reclaimed.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like a third of the building.
yeah, yeah, I mean, that's what's, yeah, that worked out nice. Thank God we put the triangle outdoor patio in there, huh? Okay.
It was a tremendous effort, as John said, on the part of everybody, and hopefully I remember to thank everybody on Saturday, and if I forgot someone, I apologize. And the only regret I have in the whole process is using the word country club.
Yeah, okay, chief, well, you know, you don't golf even, do you?
No, sir.
Okay.
I believe I got extra points on my interview from Mike Allison because I didn't golf.
I golf, but I don't know if you'd call it golf a lot of times. Okay, last but not least, sadly, Ed Sikta, was he actually acting president? No. But the past president for many, many years for our senior group in town, passed away. I think, what was he, 92?
92.
Yeah, 92, and he was buried today at St. Mary's of Vernon. And he was living where, in Grays Lake? Yeah, okay, so our condolences go out to him, and, you know, he was a good, you know, volunteer for many, many years. Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn the board meeting, go to committee of the whole?
Second.
And just-
Motion is second.
We have to go to closed session.
We'll be going to closed session, correct?
Oh, for personnel.
And pending litigation,
Okay, personnel and pending litigation.
ongoing.
Okay, is everybody clear?
Yes,
Okay, roll call. What, who made the,
I made the motion.
got a second? Okay, roll call.
Trustee Hebda?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
Aye.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Grebe?
Aye.
Trustee Williams?
Okay, motion carries. I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting to order. Next item is approval of the committee of the whole meeting minutes of November 3rd, 2015. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any comments or questions, deletions, corrections? If not, roll call.
Trustee Schultz?
Aye.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
Excuse me, I'd like to change my vote to abstain.
Hey, you weren't here.
Yes.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Grebe?
Aye.
Trustee Williams? Trustee Hebda?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the only item, right, on committee of the whole is consideration of a text amendment requiring the use of brick and/or stone on new residential and commercial buildings.
Thank you,
This
Mr.
is-
Mayor.
You put this together, obviously with discussions with me, I know.
Yes, sir, I did, and it was discussed by the board at the November 3rd meeting as well. And at that meeting, the board directed that staff prepare an amendment to to Chapter 5, the Building Code, that would require the exclusive use of masonry or stone on the exterior walls of new commercial and residential buildings. This would be on all four sides of the walls and would apply to all new commercial buildings and any residential developments that had 5 or more units. So we have done that. We've prepared those draft amendment language and included that in your packet for your review. And just as a quick review again, all exterior wall materials would be required to be natural brick, natural or cultured stone, exposed aggregate panels, textured architectural concrete, or masonry veneers. And I should note that the aggregate panels and textured architectural concrete, which is typically found in tilt-up panel construction, would be acceptable per the amendment language only for big box commercial uses and only as approved by the village board. So, oh, and I should also mention there's certain exceptions: architectural trim, fascia, soffit, porches on the front of a house. Those kind of things have been exempted from the requirements. So,
Well, it wouldn't be a house because you said minimum of 5 units.
that's correct. If we had, let's say, a residential development, let's say 120 lots or so come before you, the amendment would then kick in because it's more than 5 lots, 5 houses. and they would be required to have masonry.
Well, what,
or
you know,
stone.
yeah, but, you know, with the, I guess the custom homes, I mean, it looks like everybody's using brick and stone and,
Well, Pulte, the second floor.
no, I'm talking to Riviera Estates.
Okay, but I'm thinking with Pulte, his second floor was kind of a chalet style.
Well, I don't think we're there yet with those guys,
Yeah.
with Pulte, so I would not spend a lot of time talking about Pulte's design or lack
Okay.
thereof. So, because we're not there yet.
They don't have sewer and water.
Well, they haven't shown us, I mean, they haven't shown us anything in any
Yeah, I
concrete.
guess what I'm suggesting.
real
though,
preliminary.
is, because I wasn't here for the discussion, this is kind of new to me. So, you know, the second floor typically, you know, we'll see some other materials. And basically what you're saying is gotta be brick right up to the soffit.
That's correct. That's what the amendment says, and the language is specific in saying unless otherwise approved by the village board.
Yeah.
I mean, with
We have a say in it.
All
With,
right, so
with
we-
developments in the past, the board's always approved the architectural design. What this sets forth, though, are requirements that says, hey, our expectations are real high. We want to see a lot of brick.
Doesn't the zoning board now have to, because this is,
It's in Chapter 5 of the building code, so it would not require a public hearing if the board wished to grant a variation from it, but only the board could grant that variation. The board would have complete control over the architectural material.
I mean, you know, I mean, I know what I said at the last meeting, this is kind of our last hurrah, you know, with
Yeah.
obviously the northeast corner,
Right.
Pulte, you know, even the multifamily, if it's not, you know, and maybe some of that's gonna be 3-story. I don't, we haven't approved that with Focus or their
Right.
development partner. And there's other properties in town that infill, that it could occur in the townhouses at the TIF district.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, you know, it's gonna affect some other structures, so.
You know, I should clarify, Greg's Landing has existing approvals in place. So what you're seeing primarily at Riviera Estates and to a lesser extent in Royal Birkdale Pods, the board's already has approval design criteria for that. It's also subject to review and approval by their HOA. So these amendments would not apply to those two pods.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a historical footnote, look what we did going back on the whole Cuneo project, where we hired, you know, an architect on our behalf to pretty up the backs of the houses because so many of them faced the golf course. And I mean, you know, it actually improved, you know, the aesthetics, the architectural reliefs that are on the back of the houses that were well, obviously, you know, production homes, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Each pod has its own individual design criteria for the rear wall of the buildings that adjoin the golf course.
Right.
And the open land areas, like around where the lake is and such.
Parks, that-
And they look nice. They look
Yeah.
really nice.
Okay, we need a motion, what then?
Yeah, is there a motion?
To direct staff to prepare the ordinance,
In
amending the code?
accordance with the draft language that's attached to your packet.
So made.
Second.
Motion is second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Markwart?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Grebe?
Aye.
Trustee Williams? Trustee Hebda?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
aye.
Motion carries. Okay, that's about it, huh? We'll bring this back on the 8th, right? Okay. All right, is there a motion? What, you letting Mick go now?
Yeah.
Okay, freedom of the press has been abrogated. All right, is there a motion to adjourn committee to go
So
into
made.
closed session
So made.
for personnel and litigation?
Not going to
Motion
made.
is second.
Yep.
All
Second.
right, roll call, please.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Grebe?
Aye.
Trustee Williams? Trustee Hebda?
Aye.
Trustee Schultz?
Aye.
Trustee Markwart?
Okay, motion carries. No further business will be
Mike
discussed.
Atkins?
Thank you and good night.
Yeah, Chief, while you're out of the room, John clarified that the locker rooms